if you're one of those guys that thinks women have it easier, you're wrong. And I'm going to explain why. I think it's very easy to believe that when you're not good with women, because when you're not good with women, you see, you know, all these women that you want to have that you can't have because they're busy with some other guy that's not you. And believe me, I was there for many years. And, you know, it was this whole idea that, you know, well, you know, I wanted them and I couldn't get them, but they could always choose me if they wanted to, but they didn't choose me because they had all these other options. And then as I got to be good with women, I started to see it in a really different light. And I started to realize that actually women have it way tougher than we do. And I say they have it way tougher than we do for a few reasons. The first is time. For women, when they're young, when they're, you know, 20, 23, 24, 25, they have a lot of options. And they have a lot of access, especially because, you know, when you're young, you tend to be invited out to things more. You're more excited to go to those things. You know, you have guys from school, you have, you know, guys from work. And of course, you know, at that age, people would assume that you're not married and you're less likely to have a boyfriend or a long-term relationship. So more guys are going to try. And so, you know, you just have dick just thrown at you all the time. But that time is limited. Right? A lot of guys are like this too. When you're younger, you spend a lot more time going out and dating. And then as you get older, you start spending more time on your career and on work and other things. And the same goes for women. But the thing that's different is for the guy, as you develop in those areas, you become more and more desirable to women. But as a woman, as you spend more time in those areas, you don't become more desirable. In fact, oftentimes quite the reverse. You become less attractive. I mean, most guys aren't really interested in a girl who's tired and stressed out from work. Whereas for women, they see that as being evidence of your success or of your abilities. The fact that, you know, you're dealing with a lot and having being stressed, they think that that shows that you're a guy who's going out there and doing your thing. And so it's kind of, they can respect you. And I'm not saying you can't respect a woman for those things. You can. But what you can respect a person for and what makes you attractive as a woman, generally speaking, are very different from what makes you attractive as a man. So they have time working against them because on average, as women get older, their looks fade. And as they get older, they have less of a pool of guys they can date, right? Because, you know, when they're 20, let's say when she's 27, she doesn't, generally speaking, want to date a guy who's 25, 24, 23. But as a guy, as you get older, you have a wider pool of girls you can date, because now when you're 25, maybe a girl who's 27 won't be very interested in you, but when you're 30, the girl who's 27 can be interested in you, and the girl who's 18 can also be interested in you. And so your pool expands as you get older as a guy. And so that means that you have more time to improve yourself and get better at your social skills, get better with women, improving all areas that make you more attractive. Now, that's the second thing. Maybe that's the second thing. The next thing, the third thing, I think it's the third. The next thing is that for you as a guy, if you end up having sex with some girl that you never see again, you're generally going to think of that as a pretty good outcome. So you get that payoff from having sex. Now, maybe you're not really that into the girl. Maybe she's not that attractive. Maybe you wouldn't want to take her out again and show her to your friends. But hey, you know, you had a fun night. And that's, you know, good memory, even if you want to move on from that. But for a girl, she probably didn't have very good sex. Most of the time, women, when they're having sex with guys, especially the first time, they're not having orgasms. They're not really enjoying it that much. Many girls are just sort of laying there and just letting it happen and waiting for it to be over. And so, unlike us, they don't get much of a payoff in the early stages. The payoff comes from what might become of the time they spend with that guy. And so for them, they have a lot more dating experiences that they feel were a waste of time or not good or, you know, just negative. Whereas for guys, we tend not to feel that way. We tend to think, oh yeah, that was fun, and then I moved on to the next fun thing, and then I moved on to the next fun thing. Also, as guys, we generally don't have to be concerned about our body count. We don't have to be thinking like, oh, maybe I've been with too many women, right? Whereas that can be a concern for girls. They can feel uncomfortable talking to other people about their sexual experiences. It doesn't necessarily make them look good in the way that for us, we could share what happened with our boys and they're going to have a good laugh and everyone thinks it's fun and funny and whatever. That also makes it more challenging, is that it's not as easy for them to talk about their sexual experiences with their friends. And additionally is that, like us, they tend to get more criteria for men as they get older. You know, we also, men, tend to have more criteria for women, because as you have various experiences, you go, oh, you know what, I don't want to have that in my next relationship, or I don't want to have that with the next girl I date. Women are the same. But once again, as I pointed out, their pool of guys is shrinking. And don't forget that many of the guys that they would want to be with end up getting married. So now those guys are out. But for us, we are fine, because we can just stick with younger girls who are very unlikely to be married. And so a lot of this attitude that guys have about women and how bad they are and how they do guys wrong, a lot of this is poor management of the relationship by the guy, where he allows himself to be put in this situation because he goes along with this narrative of unconditional love and trust in a partner. And that kind of thinking is exactly how guys end up feeling that girls have all the power. And they only do that because they don't have the knowledge and the skills to manage their relationships, or to know that their relationships need to be managed. There's a lot of guys out there who talk about how marriage has no advantages for men and it's really bad and blah, 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 and all this stuff. Now, there's a lot of truth in that about the problems of marriage for men and how it puts you in a potentially bad situation. But the bigger problem is not getting married. The bigger problem is getting married without being aware of those things. And if you are aware of those things, a lot of times, and this is what you see happening these days more and more frequently, guys don't get married. They don't bother to get married, but they can have all of the benefits of marriage. They can have the girl live with them, they can have kids, they can have the girl not live with them, and they can have kids. So really, from the guy's perspective, because for the woman, she's looking for a guy who she wants to have kids with, and she's got a time limit on that that's much shorter, so that's also problematic for her, and who will stick around. And for her, she's going to need a significant amount of time. She's going to need to take a significant amount of time to spend on those kids that she has. Whereas for you as a guy, you can go and you can have a kid with this girl, and then a few months later you can go and have a kid with the next girl. Or at least you could just go back and start dating again with little to no effect from the fact that you have a kid. And so once again, you see that as you get older as a guy, you don't have all of these constraints or things that make it more difficult for you to date. And a lot of these things make it easier because you have more knowledge and experience. You know, you often will have more money, which means that you can do more in terms of travel and meeting people in different places. You can be lazier about your dates because you could just use money to pay for something if you want to go out or buy gifts or whatever. And that makes things easier in a lot of ways. So to me, when I see guys bad-mouthing women and talking about all these red flags, what this tells you is that these are guys that don't have choice. And if they had choice, they wouldn't care or even spend time thinking about these women that have red flags, because they just would move on to the girls that don't. And it's that simple. And so when you see these guys who spend so much time talking about these problems with all these women, you can know for sure that they're guys that are not very good with women.